Well, there's some news out of Washington where the House has approved a measure that would require rail labor unions to accept a contract they previously rejected. It would avert a nationwide rail strike ahead of the holidays, but the bill may face hurdles in the Senate. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander reports.
President Biden celebrating the lighting of the national Christmas tree, but it's the threat of a looming railroad strike that could still complicate the holidays for Americans. A strike that could occur as early as next Friday could cost the economy more than $500 million in its first week alone, according to one estimate.
Let me be clear, a nationwide rail shutdown would be catastrophic.
The House, with a bipartisan vote to avert a work stoppage, approving legislation that would force the rail companies and their workers to accept an agreement the White House helped broker earlier this year, giving rail unions a 24% pay raise over 5 years. But several of the unions rejected that deal because it failed to provide enough paid sick leave. The question now, will it get derailed in the Senate? Retailers and manufacturers are already racing to find alternate ways to move their products. Everything from chlorine for safe drinking water to clothes.
Preparations are already in place, a week or more out for the rail service. They're already having to find workarounds. That uncertainty is really poison for being able to plan in any sort of real way.
Some Senate Republicans arguing Washington should stay out of it.
Why should the federal government force a contract on workers that they have explicitly rejected?
And several Senate Democrats are demanding more paid sick leave. Mr. Secretary, how critical is it that the Senate approves this deal now?
It is critical. Look, the U.S. transportation system has no substitute for well-functioning freight rail. This is not a time when we can afford to have a lot of maneuvers, any kind of politics introduced here.
And Secretary Buttigieg joins us now live. Mr. Secretary, thanks for your time this morning. So this did pass through the House on a bipartisan basis. Have you spoken to members of the Senate, and are you confident it'll make it through there and soon?
I think it will. I hope it will. I'm going to be spending time with senators today, mainly to make sure they understand the implications of inaction for our transportation system. As you saw in the piece reported earlier, there is no substitute in the U.S. for functioning freight rail. And if a shutdown were to occur, that's not just shutting down our trains. It's really shutting down our economy. Immediately, you would see effects, including when it comes to inflation, prices shooting up because of the cost of shipping. You would see water treatment plants, in some cases, fairly quickly running out of the supplies that they need, and you could have American citizens in cities around the U.S. being told they need to boil their water or resort to bottled water. Within a few days, you would start to see our ports unable to operate because they couldn't ship the goods out of the port, so they would eventually get so congested they'd have to turn ships away. You would see our auto industry very quickly grinding to a halt because many facilities only have a couple of days of parts on hand. We estimate 765,000 layoffs in the first 2 weeks of a shutdown, with more to come after that. And there's no guarantee that those laid off workers would get their jobs back after a disruption ended. So my main concern is to make sure that the senators understand the implications of any kind of delay here with the clock ticking. Now, I do think it's frankly impressive to see how quickly, after Speaker Pelosi brought that to the floor yesterday, there was a strong bipartisan vote to enact that tentative agreement. This town is not known for working quickly, so it was, I think, a reflection of the urgency of the matter that the House moved that with such a strong vote. Now we need the Senate to do the same, get a bill to the president's desk, and really that bill needs to reach the president's desk this week or by this weekend in order to avoid some of the initial effects for our economy.
And the president has said that as well. They're still counting the votes, got to get to 60. Not clear that they have those votes just yet. Mr. Secretary, as you're well aware, the railroad unions are not happy about being forced into this position and having their strike blocked by the United States Congress with the backing of a president who often touts his pro-union credentials. What do you say to the unions this morning?
Well, yes, look, this is obviously something that a lot of leaders are looking at with reluctance. The president prides himself, and this administration prides itself on being the strongest pro-union administration in modern times. What we're talking about is a tentative agreement that was reached by labor leaders and companies at the bargaining table, including that 24% pay raise, average six-figure pay for rail workers, and speaking to some of their other concerns about benefits and quality of life. They have further concerns, very legitimate ones, when it comes to the ability to take sick leave. And, this reflects a compromise at the bargaining table that none of the sides thought was perfect, but is what it took to reach that preliminary accord. What I'm trying right now to make sure everybody understands is what would happen to our country if there were to be a shutdown.
Mr. Secretary, let's change subjects really quickly and get to a subject we've talked about before, and that is air travel. We talked to you before when things weren't going so well. That's an understatement. You said wait till the fall. I've got to say, Mika and I have traveled a lot this fall. I mean, almost all the flights are on time. Everything seems to be running very smoothly. There was a warning that things might get worse during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Thanksgiving, based on our relative stories, I mean, everything was smooth over Thanksgiving, too. So we want you to take, not you, but because I know you wouldn't do it by yourself, but everybody involved here, take a victory lap. I'm just curious, what so radically changed things that in June, July, August, it was an absolute nightmare, it seemed, for all Americans. And then a couple of weeks into September, things were running as smoothly or smoother than pre-COVID.
Yeah, we've really seen enormous improvement. You look across the Thanksgiving week, which was very busy for travel. In fact, Sunday, the busiest day for travel, I think, since before the pandemic in terms of the number of passengers that TSA screened. And cancellation rates held below 1% on average, which is a good sign. You can't ever get all the way to zero with weather and things that come up. But if you're below 1%, system is doing quite well. And that's compared to summer where we saw really unacceptable levels of delays and cancellations. What led to that improvement? Several steps that I was really pushing the airlines to take over the summer that, to their credit, they have. More realistic scheduling, trimming the schedules so that they were only booking flights they knew that they could support and serve. More aggressive hiring, including pay. You see a lot of airlines, including regional airlines, stepping up, offering much more competitive pay packages to their pilots. So these are the kinds of things that have contributed to major improvements, but I'm reluctant to use the words victory lap, because even though I'm really proud of the steps that have been taken, especially proud of the aviation workers who got people where they need to go, the system is still not as resilient as I would like in terms of the staffing levels. So if you did have a double whammy of a couple of major storms hitting a couple of major hubs, for example, take a while for the system to recover. So we're going to continue to watch with a lot of caution going into the Christmas and winter holidays, but major improvements, and really pleased to see the trajectory here.
Yeah, no mission accomplished moment yet, but my gosh, things certainly have improved a great deal since this summer. U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, as always, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
All right.